Why you are a liar. That's a bold statement, isn't it? At first glance, it might feel uncomfortable, even accusatory, but take a moment to think about it. Have you ever told a lie, even a small one? Maybe it was to protect someone's feelings or to avoid conflict, or maybe just to make your life a little easier. The truth is, most of us lie, often without even realizing it. In this article, we're going to explore why lying is such an intrinsic part of being human. It's not just about the lies we tell to others. It's about the lies we tell ourselves. From the small harmless fibs to the bigger deceptions we often don't want to admit, lying is woven into the very fabric of our lives. You might not want to hear this, but you are a liar. So am I. And understanding why we lie, both to others and ourselves, is the first step in discovering what it means to live an authentic life. As we dive deeper, we'll uncover the different reasons we lie, how our minds work to deceive us, and the moral and psychological costs of living a life of lies. But before we can do that, let's first define what it means to lie and why even the smallest lie can be so impactful. What is a lie? At its core, a lie is a statement made with the intention to deceive. But let's dig deeper into what makes a lie distinct from other forms of miscommunication. A mistake, for example, is a misunderstanding or an unintentional error, something that occurs without the intention to mislead. A half-truth, on the other hand, contains elements of truth, but omits or distorts key facts to alter the perception of the whole. Philosophers have long wrestled with the concept of lying. Plato, in his work The Republic, suggested that lies could sometimes be justified for the greater good, especially in the context of a ruler lying to protect the state. This raises a question: can a lie ever be acceptable if it serves a positive purpose? In contrast, Immanuel Kant, a prominent figure in moral philosophy, argued that lying is always wrong, no matter the circumstances. Kant's reasoning was simple. A lie undermines the dignity of the individual. It violates the inherent trust that people must have in one another for society to function. According to Kant, truth-telling is a moral imperative, and once we allow ourselves to lie, we erode the very foundation of ethical behavior. Despite these ethical concerns, lying is so common that it's often seen as part of everyday life. And yet, lies are never purely neutral. Even in the smallest of fibs, there's a subtle shift in the dynamics of trust, perception, and personal integrity. Psychological mechanisms of lying. Understanding why we lie begins with understanding how the human mind processes deception. Lying isn't simply a matter of telling an untruth. It involves active cognitive work. When we lie, we need to create a false narrative in our minds, often on the spot. We must suppress the truth and ensure that our words align with the false story we've crafted. One major psychological mechanism that drives lying is cognitive load. Lying requires more mental effort than telling the truth. When we lie, we engage different parts of our brain, particularly those that deal with memory, decision-making, and conflict resolution. This effort is why people often appear nervous or inconsistent when they lie. The strain of keeping track of a fabricated story can be overwhelming, especially if the lie is complex or told repeatedly. In addition to cognitive load, there's also the issue of motivation. Why do we lie? Some lies are driven by self-interest, protecting our image or avoiding punishment. Others stem from a desire to protect others or to avoid causing harm. For instance, telling a white lie to spare someone's feelings is a common practice, even though it may not always be morally sound. The underlying motive is to avoid confrontation or discomfort. Yet, not all lies are deliberate. Often, we lie without fully realizing it. This phenomenon is known as cognitive dissonance. When faced with an uncomfortable truth, our brains can rationalize a falsehood in order to make the situation more palatable. In these moments, we convince ourselves that the lie is somehow justified, even if we're not consciously aware of the deception. Philosophical analysis. Theories of lying vary greatly across different schools of thought. Utilitarianism, a form of moral philosophy, takes a pragmatic approach. According to utilitarian thinkers like John Stuart Mill, the morality of a lie depends on its consequences. If lying produces a greater good, such as preventing harm or promoting happiness, then the lie may be justified. For instance, a lie told to save a life would be seen as morally permissible in utilitarian terms. On the other hand, Kantian ethics offers a stark contrast. Kant believed that the act of lying is inherently wrong, regardless of its potential consequences. This is because lying undermines the respect for autonomy and the moral law that guides individuals. Kant famously said, "By a lie, a man annihilates his dignity as a man." In this view, lying is not just about the falsehood itself. It's about the violation of the principle that all people should be treated as ends in themselves, not merely as means to an end. This philosophical debate on the ethics of lying highlights a crucial aspect of human behavior. Lies are not only about what is being said, but also about the values they represent. Lying is a complex moral issue that cannot be reduced to mere actions or outcomes. The intentions behind the lie, the context in which it's told, and its consequences all play a role in determining its ethical standing. While these moral frameworks provide valuable insight, the reality is that lying is often not so black and white. In everyday life, we encounter situations where the lines between truth and deception are blurred, and the ethics of lying become even more complicated. As we'll explore in the following sections, the decision to lie is often influenced by psychological, cultural, and social factors, making it difficult to pinpoint an absolute moral rule. Lying is an undeniable part of human existence, not just in our personal lives, but in society at large. The truth is, lying plays a fundamental role in how we navigate the world, interact with others, and even survive. Evolutionary psychology offers some insight into why this might be. In the animal kingdom, deception is often used as a survival tactic. For humans, this instinctual tendency to deceive has been crucial in social dynamics. Deception can be traced back to the very survival instincts of our ancestors. In a world filled with threats, the ability to manipulate perceptions and deceive others could make the difference between life and death. Whether it was pretending to be less of a threat to predators or lying about the location of food to competitors, the skill of deception helped early humans thrive in a harsh environment. In modern society, the purpose of lying has evolved, but its impact is still profound. Today, lies can protect our social status, maintain our reputation, and help us fit into groups. People lie to gain advantages in careers, to avoid awkward situations, or to navigate complex social networks. The social function of lying is crucial. Without it, many of our day-to-day interactions would be more difficult, or even impossible. Lying allows for the creation of personal and social identities. We tell small lies about ourselves, shaping the way we are perceived by others. For instance, we may exaggerate certain accomplishments or downplay others, crafting an image that we believe is more favourable or acceptable. This form of self-presentation is especially evident in today's social media culture, where people carefully curate their lives to appear successful, happy, and flawless, even if the reality is different. In this sense, lying helps maintain the smooth functioning of society, where complete honesty may not always be desirable. However, this constant balancing act between truth and falsehood also raises ethical concerns, especially when these lies begin to undermine genuine connections and trust. Lying is not universally regarded in the same way across cultures. While truth-telling may be emphasized in some societies, others prioritize maintaining harmony and avoiding conflict, which can make lying more socially acceptable. In Western cultures, particularly in the context of the individualistic ideals of self-expression and autonomy, truth is often seen as a virtue. Being truthful is closely tied to being authentic, and dishonesty is typically viewed with disdain. However, in many Eastern cultures, the emphasis on group harmony and collective well-being often leads to a more lenient view of lying. In countries like Japan or China, white lies are commonly told to preserve social harmony and avoid shame or embarrassment. In these contexts, lying is not necessarily seen as morally wrong, but as a means of maintaining smooth social relationships. For example, in some cultures, avoiding direct confrontation is a form of respect. Lying to spare someone's feelings or prevent unnecessary conflict can be viewed as an act of kindness rather than deception. This highlights the idea that lying is not an inherently bad or good act. It is shaped by cultural values and the expectations of the society in which we live. Despite these cultural differences, the act of lying is still a fundamental aspect of human interaction everywhere. What varies is how it is justified, understood, and tolerated. In some cases, lies may be seen as essential to preserving the social fabric. In others, they may be condemned as harmful or immoral. When we think about lying, we often think of the lies we tell others. But perhaps even more pervasive and more insidious is the lie we tell ourselves. Self-deception is a form of lying to ourselves that can be just as destructive as lying to others, if not more so. In fact, many of the lies we tell others often stem from our inability to confront the truth about ourselves. Self-deception occurs when we hold beliefs or make decisions that are disconnected from reality, often to protect our sense of self or to avoid uncomfortable truths. Psychologists argue that self-deception is a defense mechanism, one that shields us from painful realities and emotional discomfort. It allows us to maintain a positive self-image and avoid feelings of guilt, anxiety, or shame. The concept of self-deception has been discussed by many philosophers, most notably by Jean-Paul Sartre. Sartre's idea of bad faith refers to the process of lying to oneself in order to avoid confronting the existential truth of one's freedom and responsibility. According to Sartre, we deceive ourselves by adopting societal roles or conventions that give our lives meaning, all while ignoring the fact that we are free to choose our actions and create our own purpose. This avoidance of freedom, Sartre argues, is a form of self-deception. Similarly, Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis introduces the idea of the unconscious mind, where our deepest desires, fears, and conflicts are repressed. Self-deception, in Freud's view, is part of our defense mechanisms. We lie to ourselves to protect our ego from painful truths that might otherwise overwhelm us. The problem with self-deception is that it prevents personal growth and authenticity. When we deceive ourselves, we avoid confronting our flaws and limitations, which prevents us from learning and evolving. As much as we might want to believe in an idealized version of ourselves, accepting our true nature is the first step toward genuine self-improvement. In this section, we've explored the widespread nature of lying. Whether it's in the context of personal relationships, social interactions, or cultural norms, lying is an integral part of human life. But as we've seen, the lies we tell to ourselves may have the most profound impact on our lives. They influence not only how we relate to others, but also how we understand and engage with our own identities. Lying, whether to ourselves or others, is rarely without consequence. While we may lie for a variety of reasons, such as to protect ourselves, avoid discomfort, or maintain social harmony, the act of deception often comes with a heavy price. The consequences of lying can be ethical, psychological, and social. And these consequences are often far-reaching, affecting not only the individual, but also their relationships and society at large. At an ethical level, lying undermines the very fabric of trust that binds human relationships. Trust is foundational to social interactions, and once broken, it is difficult to rebuild. In personal relationships, lies can create a ripple effect, leading to feelings of betrayal, resentment, and distrust. A lie may seem small in the moment, but the long-term impact of repeated deception can erode the sense of security that partners, friends, or family members feel in each other. Over time, these cracks in trust can lead to relationship breakdowns, sometimes beyond repair. The psychological impact of lying is equally significant. When we lie, we engage in a mental balancing act, keeping track of our falsehoods and ensuring that we don't contradict ourselves. This creates mental stress, often manifesting as anxiety or guilt. Research shows that people experience elevated levels of cognitive load when they lie, meaning that telling falsehoods demands more mental effort than telling the truth. This cognitive strain can lead to emotional fatigue and increased stress, as the liar must constantly maintain the deception and avoid being caught in a lie. The guilt associated with lying can also affect one's sense of self-worth. Even though we may justify our lies to ourselves, the subconscious awareness that we are deceiving others can lead to feelings of shame or regret. This internal conflict can erode our sense of authenticity, leaving us feeling disconnected from our true selves. The psychological toll of maintaining a false persona can lead to a loss of confidence, self-doubt, and even depression. At a social level, lying distorts our interactions with others. In a world where lies are common, it becomes difficult to discern who we can trust. Social bonds rely on shared truths, and when these truths are compromised, the foundations of social cohesion begin to crumble. While some lies are seen as harmless or necessary for maintaining social harmony, others can cause harm by spreading misinformation or perpetuating deceitful behavior. For example, lies that contribute to the spread of rumors or misinformation can cause unnecessary conflict, create division, or even harm public trust in institutions. One of the most damaging effects of lying is the perpetuation of inequality. Lies often serve to protect those in power or those who have something to gain from deception. In political systems, for instance, lies can be used to manipulate public opinion, conceal wrongdoing, or justify unethical actions. This creates a cycle where the powerful are able to maintain control by distorting reality, while the truth is obscured from the public. The erosion of truth in these contexts can undermine democracy, accountability, and justice. Despite the negative consequences, the act of lying persists. Why? Part of the answer lies in the way lies fulfill certain psychological needs. As humans, we seek to protect our self-image, avoid punishment, and gain social advantage. Lying allows us to navigate situations where the truth might be uncomfortable, awkward, or inconvenient. It provides a shortcut to achieving the outcomes we desire without confronting the consequences of being fully honest. However, this is a short-term solution, and as we've seen, the long-term effects of lying are often far more damaging than telling the truth in the first place. Interestingly, some philosophers and psychologists argue that the desire to avoid these consequences is what often motivates people to lie in the first place. According to the theory of cognitive dissonance, we are driven to resolve the discomfort that arises when our actions contradict our beliefs. When we lie, we reduce the internal conflict between the truth and our desires or fears. In this sense, lying is a coping mechanism, a way to alleviate the discomfort of facing harsh truths about ourselves or others. Despite this, there is a growing recognition of the benefits of honesty. Being truthful, though sometimes difficult, offers a path to greater authenticity and integrity. Truth-telling fosters stronger relationships, reduces mental strain, and contributes to a healthier society. When we are honest with ourselves and others, we build trust, promote transparency, and create an environment where people feel safe and valued. In contrast to the psychological burden of maintaining lies, Honesty can be liberating, allowing us to connect with others more deeply and with greater authenticity. But how do we move from a life of deception to a life of truth? It starts with acknowledging the lies we tell ourselves and others. Self-awareness is key to breaking the cycle of dishonesty. By becoming more conscious of our motives for lying and the impact our lies have on ourselves and those around us, we can begin to cultivate more authentic ways of engaging with the world. Admitting to our lies is often the first step in reclaiming our integrity. It requires courage to confront the truth about ourselves, our relationships, and the world around us. But once we begin to tell the truth, we begin to experience the freedom that comes with authenticity. Honesty, while at times challenging, fosters a sense of peace and clarity. It allows us to live without the constant weight of deception on our shoulders, and it strengthens the connections we have with others. As we've seen, the act of lying has profound ethical, psychological, and social consequences. It may offer temporary relief or short-term gains, but it also leads to long-term costs that can damage relationships, erode trust, and cause internal conflict. By recognizing the destructive power of lies and making a commitment to truthfulness, we can begin to build a more honest, authentic life, one that is grounded in integrity and trust. Lying, whether to ourselves or others, may feel like a shortcut in difficult situations, but it often leads us further away from truth and authenticity. While the consequences of lying can be profound, the path to honesty and self-realization is not an easy one. Overcoming the lies we live requires self-awareness, courage, and the willingness to embrace discomfort in the pursuit of truth. The truth is often harder to face, but it is the foundation of personal growth, genuine relationships, and a meaningful life. The first step on this path is acknowledging the lies we tell ourselves. We all have internal narratives that we use to justify our actions, decisions, and desires. Sometimes these narratives are based on distorted perceptions of reality, ways of thinking that make us feel better about ourselves or our circumstances. These lies serve as a shield, protecting us from facing uncomfortable truths about our flaws, our past, or the impact of our behavior on others. They allow us to avoid the pain of self-confrontation and the discomfort of change. However, acknowledging these self-deceptions is a crucial part of breaking free from them. Self-awareness is the key to uncovering the lies we tell ourselves. This process involves taking a hard, honest look at our motives, our fears, and our behaviors. It requires asking difficult questions. Why do I lie to myself? What am I afraid of? What am I trying to avoid? The answers may not always be easy to face, but confronting them is necessary for growth. Once we acknowledge the lies, the next step is to challenge them. This involves questioning the narratives we have built around ourselves and our lives. It means confronting the uncomfortable truths we've been avoiding. For instance, we might need to acknowledge that we've been holding on to unhealthy relationships because we fear being alone, or that we've been avoiding responsibility for our actions because it's easier to blame others. By challenging these false beliefs, we begin to reclaim control over our lives and make more authentic choices. It's important to recognize that the process of unmasking the lies we live is not an event, it's a journey. Self-deception is often deeply ingrained, and it takes time to unravel the layers of falsehoods we've constructed. The more we practice self-awareness and honesty, the easier it becomes to identify when we are lying to ourselves and to others. But this is not a linear process. There will be setbacks, moments of doubt, and times when the temptation to lie feels overwhelming. One of the most powerful tools on this journey to truth is vulnerability. Being vulnerable means allowing ourselves to be seen for who we truly are, without the protective mask of lies. Vulnerability requires bravery, as it exposes us to the possibility of judgment, rejection, or failure. Yet it is through vulnerability that we can forge deeper, more authentic connections with others. When we allow ourselves to be open and honest, we create space for others to do the same. In this way, vulnerability becomes a catalyst for trust and connection, replacing the fear and isolation that lies often create. Another critical component of overcoming lies is forgiveness, both of ourselves and others. Often we lie because we fear judgment, failure, or the consequences of our actions. But when we embrace honesty, we also need to forgive ourselves for the lies we've told in the past. Self-forgiveness is essential for moving forward. It allows us to release the guilt and shame that can keep us trapped in cycles of dishonesty. Only by forgiving ourselves can we truly learn from our mistakes and make better choices in the future. Forgiving others is equally important. People lie to us, deceive us, and betray our trust, and the pain of these actions can be deep. However, holding on to resentment and anger only prolongs our suffering and prevents healing. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning the lies or letting them go unaddressed, but it does mean freeing ourselves from the grip of bitterness. It means choosing to let go of the emotional burden that comes with holding on to grudges. Through forgiveness, we can rebuild trust and move forward, creating space for honesty and reconciliation. On this journey toward truth, it's also important to embrace discomfort. Honesty is often difficult, especially when the truth is painful, or when we fear how others will react. But the discomfort of truth is far less harmful than the long-term consequences of living in lies. As we practice honesty, we may face difficult conversations, confront painful realities, or experience the fallout of past lies. However, these challenges are opportunities for growth. They push us to expand our emotional resilience, deepen our understanding of ourselves and others, and ultimately live more fully and authentically. Moreover, the commitment to living authentically requires a willingness to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is the courage to expose our true selves, flaws and all, to the world. It means sharing our fears, our insecurities, and our desires without the shield of falsehoods or masks. In a world where perfection is often celebrated and where social media encourages the curation of idealized versions of ourselves, vulnerability is a radical act. It requires bravery to be authentic in a society that often values appearances over substance. But it is through vulnerability that we form the deepest and most meaningful connections. There is a certain strength that comes with vulnerability. When we allow ourselves to be open and honest, we create space for others to do the same. This creates a ripple effect, an environment where authenticity is valued and where people can be their true selves without fear of judgment. By embracing vulnerability, we cultivate a culture of truth, one where openness, acceptance, and compassion are at the forefront of human interaction. In addition to the personal benefits of embracing the truth, living authentically has societal implications. When we are honest with ourselves and others, we contribute to the creation of a more transparent and ethical world. Truth-telling in the public sphere, whether in politics, business, or social movements, has the potential to shift the tides of society. When individuals and organizations prioritize truth, they create spaces where accountability, fairness, and justice can thrive. Living authentically also means standing up for what we believe in, even when it is unpopular or challenging. It requires the courage to express our beliefs, defend our values, and advocate for change. This might mean challenging the status quo, speaking out against injustice, or confronting uncomfortable truths in our communities. It is through these acts of authenticity that we create the possibility for a more just and equitable world. One of the most liberating aspects of embracing the truth is the sense of peace it brings. When we live in alignment with our values, we experience a deep sense of congruence between our inner and outer worlds. There is no longer a need to hide behind masks, pretense, or falsehoods. We can show up fully as ourselves, free from the anxiety and stress that comes with maintaining a false persona. This peace allows us to approach life with greater clarity, focus, and purpose. Ultimately, living a life of truth and authenticity is an act of self-liberation. It allows us to break free from the constraints of self-deception and societal expectations, and to live in accordance with our deepest values. While the path to truth may be challenging, the rewards are immeasurable. By choosing honesty, we unlock our fullest potential as individuals and as a society. We create a life that is not only more fulfilling and meaningful, but also more connected, compassionate, and just. As we continue to embrace the truth, both within ourselves and in our relationships with others, we take the first steps toward creating a world where authenticity is the norm rather than the exception. It is through this commitment to truth that we can create lives that are not only honest, but deeply fulfilling. To fully grasp the complexities of why we lie, it's crucial to understand the role of self-deception. Lying isn't always a conscious act. In fact, much of it stems from mechanisms that operate below the surface of our awareness. Self-deception is the process by which we convince ourselves of false beliefs in order to avoid uncomfortable truths. This psychological defense mechanism allows us to maintain our sense of self-worth and avoid the emotional pain that might arise from confronting the truth. Self-deception is particularly insidious because it often operates in tandem with our deepest desires and fears. It is an internal narrative we create to justify our actions, beliefs, and behaviors, even when they don't align with reality. We may lie to ourselves in ways that feel protective, but in doing so, we are simply postponing the inevitable confrontation with the truth. The more we deceive ourselves, the harder it becomes to recognize the lies we are living. In many ways, self-deception traps us in a cycle of false beliefs, preventing us from experiencing personal growth and understanding. One of the key ways self-deception works is by distorting our perception of reality. We may convince ourselves that we are not as flawed as we actually are, or that our choices have not had harmful consequences. For example, a person might justify a lie by saying it was for the greater good, even though they know deep down that the lie caused harm. This kind of rationalization allows us to preserve our self-image while avoiding the discomfort of acknowledging our mistakes. The problem with self-deception is that it is often self-reinforcing. Once we begin to lie to ourselves, it becomes easier to continue living in denial. Our minds create elaborate stories to justify our behavior, and over time these stories become entrenched. We start to believe our own fabrications, and they become part of our identity. This can lead to a profound disconnect between how we perceive ourselves and how we actually behave. The more we deceive ourselves, the less we know about who we truly are, and the more difficult it becomes to break free from the lies we live. There are several psychological factors that contribute to self-deception. One of the most significant is the desire to protect our self-esteem. We all want to feel good about ourselves, and sometimes the truth can be too painful to accept. We may deceive ourselves into thinking that we are more competent, successful, or moral than we actually are, simply to avoid facing our imperfections. This kind of self-deception provides a temporary boost to our self-worth, but it ultimately prevents us from confronting the reality of our shortcomings and learning from our mistakes. Another important factor is cognitive dissonance, which occurs when our actions contradict our beliefs or values. When we engage in behaviors that conflict with our self-image, it creates an internal tension that is uncomfortable to experience. To reduce this discomfort, we often deceive ourselves, rationalizing our actions or minimizing their impact. For example, if someone who values honesty lies to avoid conflict, they might convince themselves that the lie was justified in the moment, even though it goes against their core values. By distorting the truth, they ease the cognitive dissonance and avoid confronting the discomfort of their actions. Moreover, self-deception is often a product of fear of rejection, fear of failure, or fear of facing the consequences of our actions. We lie to avoid these fears, hoping that the truth will remain hidden and that we can continue to live in a way that feels safe. But as we've seen, this avoidance only leads to deeper problems. The fear that drives self-deception may provide temporary relief, but it prevents us from experiencing the growth and change that come from facing our fears directly. The role of self-deception in our lives is profound, and its impact can be seen in everything from personal relationships to societal structures. Self-deception can prevent us from recognizing harmful patterns in our behavior or accepting responsibility for our actions. It can lead us to make decisions that are not in our best interest and to ignore the needs and feelings of those around us. In this sense, self-deception is not just a personal issue, but a societal one. When large groups of people deceive themselves, whether in the context of politics, business, or social issues, it can create widespread harm as the truth is ignored in favor of comfort and convenience. However, there is hope. The awareness of self-deception is the first step toward overcoming it. Once we recognize the ways in which we deceive ourselves, we can begin to dismantle these false beliefs and face the truth. This process requires vulnerability and honesty, as it involves confronting parts of ourselves that we may not want to acknowledge, but it is through the process of self-awareness that we can begin to heal and grow. One powerful tool in overcoming self-deception is mindfulness. By practicing mindfulness, we become more attuned to our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. We learn to observe our inner world without judgment, allowing us to see the ways in which we may be deceiving ourselves. Mindfulness helps us create space between our automatic reactions and our conscious decisions, enabling us to make more intentional choices. This awareness gives us the power to break free from self-deception and to live in a way that is more aligned with our true values. In addition to mindfulness, therapy or counseling can be an invaluable resource for confronting self-deception. A trained therapist can help us identify the lies we live by and explore the underlying fears and beliefs that drive them. Through therapy, we can begin to develop healthier coping mechanisms and learn how to face the truth without resorting to deception. The journey toward overcoming self-deception is not easy, but it is a necessary one for anyone who wishes to live authentically. As we begin to confront the lies we tell ourselves and others, we free ourselves from the chains of dishonesty. We gain a deeper understanding of who we truly are, and we are able to make decisions that are in alignment with our values and our true selves. By shedding the layers of self-deception, we uncover the freedom to live with integrity, compassion, and authenticity. In this way, self-deception is both a challenge and an opportunity. It is a challenge because it prevents us from living truthfully and fully, but it is also an opportunity, an invitation to grow, to change, and to become more self-aware. By embracing the truth and confronting the lies we live, we can break free from the patterns of self-deception that hold us back and step into a life of greater authenticity and fulfillment. As we draw closer to the end of this journey of understanding why we are liars, it becomes clear that the stakes are high. The lies we tell, whether to ourselves or others, create invisible chains that bind us, trapping us in cycles of self-deception, shame, and disconnection. These chains may seem comfortable at first, offering us temporary relief or the illusion of safety, but they ultimately rob us of the freedom to live authentically and fully. The path to liberation lies in breaking free from these chains and embracing the truth. One of the most profound benefits of living truthfully is the sense of peace it brings. The emotional and mental toll of living in dishonesty is often underestimated. When we lie, we constantly carry the weight of our falsehoods, whether we are consciously aware of it or not. This weight can cause anxiety, stress, and guilt. there is a constant fear of being discovered or exposed, and this fear can undermine our sense of security. However, when we live truthfully, this burden is lifted. We no longer have to remember our lies or worry about being caught. This sense of relief and peace is a profound reward for those who are willing to choose honesty over deception. Living truthfully also leads to greater self-respect. When we align our actions with our words, we cultivate a sense of integrity that strengthens our self-esteem. Self-respect comes from knowing that we are living in a way that reflects our values and our true self. It gives us the confidence to navigate the world with authenticity, knowing that we are acting in accordance with our deepest beliefs. The respect we gain from living truthfully enhances our sense of dignity and self-worth, empowering us to take on life's challenges with greater resilience. Moreover, the long-term benefits of truthfulness extend beyond our internal experience. They ripple out into our relationships with others. When we are honest, we create a foundation of trust and openness. Trust is the cornerstone of any meaningful relationship, and without it, connections quickly become shallow and fragile. Honesty fosters a deeper sense of intimacy and understanding, allowing us to relate to others in ways that are genuine and fulfilling. It invites vulnerability as we allow others to see us for who we truly are, and in turn, they feel safe to do the same. In contrast, dishonesty creates distance between people. Lies breed suspicion, insecurity, and distrust. Even small lies can have a corrosive effect on relationships, eroding the bond between individuals over time. Once trust is broken, it is incredibly difficult to rebuild. The damage done by dishonesty can create lasting rifts that prevent true connection and intimacy from forming. However, when we choose honesty, we create relationships that are strong, resilient, and based on mutual respect. Another significant benefit of living truthfully is the ability to make more informed and thoughtful decisions. When we are truthful with ourselves, we gain a clearer understanding of our desires, our fears, and our motivations. This self-awareness allows us to make decisions that align with our true values and long-term goals. We no longer need to rely on superficial justifications or rationalizations to explain our actions. Instead, we can act with clarity, confidence, and conviction. The clarity that comes from honesty also enables us to navigate life's challenges with greater ease. When we are in touch with the truth of our situation, we can respond to difficulties more effectively. We are better equipped to handle setbacks, accept responsibility for our mistakes, and learn from our experiences. In contrast, dishonesty clouds our judgment and makes it harder to see things clearly. When we deny the truth or distort reality, we become stuck in a cycle of avoidance and confusion. Living truthfully, on the other hand, empowers us to approach life with confidence and resilience. In addition to personal growth, living truthfully can lead to positive societal change. As individuals, we are part of larger communities and systems, and our commitment to truth can influence the world around us. When we speak out against injustice, hold ourselves and others accountable, and refuse to tolerate dishonesty, we contribute to the creation of a more ethical and transparent society. Small acts of honesty can have a ripple effect, inspiring others to follow suit and fostering a culture of integrity. This principle is particularly important in the context of leadership. Leaders who prioritize truthfulness inspire trust and loyalty among their followers. When leaders are transparent, authentic, and accountable, they set a powerful example for others to follow. Conversely, leaders who lie or engage in deception undermine their credibility and erode public trust. The integrity of a leader is crucial in shaping the values and culture of an organization or community. By choosing honesty, leaders can create environments where truth is valued and ethical behavior is the norm. Living truthfully also enhances our overall well-being. Research shows that individuals who are more honest tend to experience greater levels of psychological and emotional health. Lies and deceit can create cognitive dissonance, a state of mental discomfort that arises when our actions contradict our beliefs. This dissonance can lead to stress, anxiety, and even depression. On the other hand, truthfulness leads to a sense of congruence between our inner and outer worlds. When our actions align with our values, we experience greater psychological harmony and emotional stability. Finally, living truthfully allows us to experience life more fully. When we are honest with ourselves, we open ourselves up to deeper experiences, greater intimacy, and more authentic connections. We no longer have to hide behind masks or play roles to gain approval. We can simply be ourselves, embracing both our strengths and our weaknesses. This freedom to be authentic allows us to experience life with greater joy, fulfillment, and meaning. We are no longer constrained by the fear of being exposed or rejected, because we know that the truth, no matter how difficult, is always better than living in the shadows of lies. As we conclude this exploration of why we are liars and how to break free from the lies we live, we are left with one crucial question. How do we move forward? How do we cultivate a life of truth, both for ourselves and in our relationships with others? While the journey toward truth may seem daunting, it is also incredibly rewarding. The process of living authentically requires commitment, self-awareness, and continuous effort. But it is a path that leads to a life of freedom, peace, and fulfillment. The first step in cultivating a life of truth is self-awareness. We cannot change what we are unaware of, so the practice of being mindful of our thoughts, actions, and motivations is essential. Regular self-reflection allows us to identify the lies we tell ourselves and others, and helps us understand the underlying reasons for those lies. It may involve asking ourselves uncomfortable questions. Why do we lie? What are we afraid of? What is at stake if we embrace the truth? These questions are not always easy to answer, but they are crucial for understanding the root causes of our dishonesty. Self-awareness can be cultivated through practices such as journaling, meditation, or simply setting aside time each day for quiet reflection. The goal is to create a space where we can examine our thoughts and behaviors without judgment, allowing us to confront the truth of who we are and why we act the way we do. By becoming more aware of our tendencies to deceive, we empower ourselves to make more conscious choices moving forward. The next step is developing the courage to face uncomfortable truths. Living truthfully is not always easy. It can be painful to confront the lies we've told ourselves and others, especially if they have been a part of our lives for a long time. But in order to break free from the chains of dishonesty, we must be willing to face the discomfort that comes with revealing the truth. This requires vulnerability, as we expose parts of ourselves that may feel vulnerable or unflattering. But it is through this vulnerability that we create space for growth and healing. One way to develop the courage to embrace the truth is by starting small. We don't need to tackle every lie or deceit all at once. Instead, we can begin by being truthful in situations where the stakes are lower, whether that's admitting when we're wrong, expressing our true feelings, or acknowledging our mistakes. Over time, as we build our confidence in being truthful in these smaller moments, we will find it easier to embrace the truth in more challenging situations. An essential part of living truthfully is fostering emotional resilience. The truth, especially when it forces us to confront uncomfortable realities, can evoke strong emotions, shame, guilt, fear, or sadness. Building emotional resilience helps us navigate these feelings without reverting to lies or self-deception. Emotional resilience involves learning to accept. One way to build emotional resilience is by practicing self-compassion. When we confront painful truths, it's important to be kind to ourselves. We may feel ashamed or embarrassed about the lies we've told, but it's important to remember that everyone makes mistakes. The goal is not perfection, but progress. By being compassionate toward ourselves, we give ourselves permission to learn, grow, and continue on the path to greater honesty. Additionally, cultivating honesty in our relationships is essential. If we want to live truthfully, we must create environments where truth is valued and where others feel safe to be honest as well. This begins with being truthful ourselves. When we set the example by being open, vulnerable, and authentic, we create space for others to do the same. However, honesty in relationships also requires compassion and tact. While we should always strive to speak the truth, we must also be mindful of how our words may affect others. Truth, when delivered with empathy, can foster deeper connections, trust, and mutual respect. Another key to cultivating a life of truth is learning how to deal with the fear of judgment or rejection. It's common to fear that being honest will lead to negative consequences, whether it's losing a relationship, facing criticism, or being misunderstood. However, the fear of judgment often keeps us trapped in a cycle of dishonesty. The truth, though it may cause discomfort or conflict in the short term, ultimately leads to greater freedom. When we live truthfully, we are not dependent on others' approval or validation. We free ourselves from the need to hide behind falsehoods and are empowered to live authentically, regardless of external opinions. Part of this process involves embracing the concept of radical honesty. Radical honesty is the practice of being completely transparent in all aspects of life, expressing our thoughts, feelings, and desires openly and without concealment. While this may sound intimidating, radical honesty is about rejecting the social norms that encourage politeness at the expense of truth. By embracing radical honesty, we allow ourselves to show up fully in every situation, which leads to greater personal integrity and deeper, more genuine connections with others. The final step in cultivating a life of truth is to practice ongoing growth. Living truthfully is not a destination, but a continual process. It requires constant self-reflection, a willingness to learn, and the courage to face new truths as they arise. We will make mistakes along the way, and we will encounter challenges that test our commitment to honesty. But it is through this ongoing journey that we develop the wisdom, compassion, and resilience necessary to live authentically. By continuously striving to live in alignment with the truth, we create lives that are richer, more meaningful, and more connected. In conclusion, the path to truth is neither simple nor quick, but it is profoundly rewarding. By committing to self-awareness, emotional resilience, and radical honesty, we can break free from the lies we live and embrace a life of authenticity. The truth will set us free, but we must choose it each day, in every thought, word, and action. In doing so, we cultivate a life of integrity, peace, and fulfillment, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. The journey may be difficult, but the rewards of living truthfully far outweigh the temporary comforts of deception. Through truth, we reclaim our power and create lives that are genuinely ours. As we reach the end of this exploration into why we lie and the consequences of those lies, one thing becomes abundantly clear. The truth, though often uncomfortable, is the key to living a life of freedom, authenticity, and fulfillment. The lies we tell ourselves and others may offer temporary relief, but they come at a cost: self-deception, disconnection, and a life that is anything but genuine. The purpose of this article has not been to condemn you or anyone else for the lies we all tell. We are human, and as such, we are prone to deceive ourselves as a way of coping with difficult emotions, fears, and challenges. However, by recognizing the lies we live and understanding the deeper psychological, emotional, and societal factors that drive us to deceive, we can begin to make conscious choices to break free from those patterns. Living truthfully, as we have seen, is a process, a lifelong journey of self-awareness, self-compassion, and courage. It requires us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world around us. But in doing so, we gain the freedom to live authentically, to build deeper, more meaningful relationships, and to experience the peace that comes with knowing we are aligned with our true selves. The benefits of living truthfully extend far beyond personal peace. They influence the way we interact with others and the world. Honesty creates trust, fosters understanding, and builds stronger, more resilient communities. It is through truth that we can create meaningful change, whether within ourselves, our relationships, or society at large. The act of embracing the truth is revolutionary in its ability to dismantle the structures of dishonesty and self-deception that hold us captive. The journey toward truth is not easy, and it is certainly not without its challenges. There will be moments of discomfort, fear, and resistance. But the beauty of truth lies in its power to set us free, even when that freedom comes with a price. The more we embrace the truth, the more we step into the fullness of our lives. The more we live in alignment with our values and authenticity, the more we create a world where truth is cherished, where lies no longer hold dominion over our hearts and minds. If you take one thing away from this article, let it be this: you are not defined by the lies you have told. You are defined by the choices you make moving forward. You have the power to step into your truth, to shed the layers of self-deception, and to embrace a life of integrity, honesty, and authenticity. It is through the practice of truthfulness that you will unlock the door to a life of deeper meaning, connection, and fulfillment. So as you move forward from this moment, ask yourself, what truth have I been avoiding? What lies have I been telling myself and others? And how can I begin to step into the truth, even when it feels uncomfortable or frightening? The answers to these questions are the first steps on the road to freedom, peace, and the life you are truly meant to live. Remember, the truth will set you free, but it is up to you to choose it.